If we're paying karma anyways, what would even be the point of hell to begin with? Yeah, and that's something to think about. If we're paying karma here on Earth for the misdoings that we've already done, then why would hell even need to be involved? Well, hell actually is a real place. The video that is featured on my channel homepage pretty much goes into it. And it gets some things right, some things wrong. But ultimately, what hell is not very directly related to its descriptions in the New Testament. I mean, the Bible does not have a monopoly on the concept of hell. You know, there's like Buddhist concepts of hell and other stuff like that. But the descriptions in the New Testament don't really track that well with reality. Obviously, the big elephant in the room is, do I go to a place of eternal torment for being a naughty boy? And really, the answer is no. And a lot of people have been traumatized by this idea that they're getting it wrong in life, that they're going to be tortured eternally forever. Maybe it's just me. I find it a little bit funny in the sense that I saw this, not really a meme, but like, so somebody on Facebook was saying it's like, my mom would tell us as kids that we had a third older brother who turned into a mushroom because they didn't take baths and wash their brush their teeth, and they even the mother even included pictures of like a mushroom in their family photo book just to scare them. It's kind of funny. It's like, just do the right thing, and you don't have to worry about all these terrible fates. But it's just simply not true that you go to a place of eternal torment. Well, to understand what the purpose of hell is, we have to go back to the entire beginning and the entire scheme of what this entire cycle is. And this topic is actually a good exercise to reinforce a lot of the meanings of these terms that I use on this channel, like ascending soul and descending soul. And what is this cycle? And you know what I mean? What is a chosen one? Everything like that. Well, um, I think a good place to start is the dissension. And I typed up some notes here that kind of go into it. I might be getting to a couple of things prematurely, but I just got to deal with my ADHD and me going all over the place. So you say there's always way more descending souls than ascending souls, because God's guidance via Pluto, which gives you the power to consciously and intentionally work productively with the things of the world in an alchemical way, allows you to evolve at 1 million times the rate at which descending souls devolve, because descending souls aren't actually being guided. This is going to be a running theme throughout my channel, but also on this video, is there's so many like funny paradoxes that are in reality. I'm going to get into more as I read on, but one that jumps out at me through reading this is the outer planets, which have the slowest orbit in relation to us, have the property of actually speeding things up at the level of our spiritual progress. Like they can be experienced in a really jarring sort of fast way, particularly beyond the bounds of Saturn. Um, but as we get closer inward, we have really fast moving planets like the moon and Mercury and Venus, all of which, of course, surround the Earth. And they actually have the property of kind of slowing things down. They can be experienced in kind of like a emotionally hysterical or mentally um, hyperactive way, like in the case of Mercury and the Moon. But ultimately, there is such a degree of distraction that they're slowing things down at the level of spiritual progress. Um, there, I say, there is a little bit of truth to the whole fallen angel thing. Adam and Eve isn't a one-time thing involving a couple of people. The story of Genesis is a continuous process. The soul is given one rule, which is to not eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Uranus, which rules rebellion, is the impulse to eat that fruit of duality. That's the original rebellion. God gave us a rule. Uranus, the impulse to rebel, compelled us to eat that fruit. Uranus is the impulse to duality, then, as well as the impulse back to the union of opposites. It moves between Neptune and Saturn, Binah and Keter, the visible and the invisible, which is the outward and the inward. So the entire journey to descend begins with the impulse of rebellion. God, as the law or Tao, says, okay, you say I'm too controlling, so I'll let you play your own game. Choose your own adventure. And so the descending soul does, and it wanders outside of Eden. And so an angel of Saturn, which is the planet of walls and blockages, an angel of Saturn guards the gate back into Eden so you can't get back in. So this is your separation from unity and separation from God and divinity. As it wanders through the world with its sense of good and evil, which it got from eating that fruit, it operates according to what it knows, which is pleasure and pain, thanks to this duality. The world doesn't guide the descending soul necessarily, but due to the hedonistic nature of the dualist mind that ate the fruit, the act of pursuing the pleasures that the world offers and avoiding and disavowing the pain, all the while having no guidance from God, which is what we wanted, leads to demonic invasion of the mind using the unconsciousness that's created via the avoidance of pain as a substrate and breeding ground. Right, so there's unconsciousness that's created through the desire to not face the negative sides of life. And that unconsciousness, it creates this unlit darkness that filth basically breeds in as a breeding ground. You know, sun is kind of like a disinfectant. The unexamined shadow means the separation of the sun and Saturn. The sun can't reach this area of darkness, and so filthy things breed in there because the sun isn't there to disinfect it. It's the unexamined, unintegrated shadow, and so demons grow in there. Before they know it, the descending souls are actually completely controlled and have no agency or autonomy anymore, because the unclean spirits now control their body and put their mind in bondage. In this video, I am going to get into a really great resource on what hell is via Carl Jung's Red Book. But another Jungian concept is shadow possession. Is basically what happens is when you repress, when you disavow, when you do not face the negative, dark aspects of yourself, they actually take on a life of their own, and then that leads to possession. This is basically seen in narcissists as false self-possession, but really narcissism as a phenomenon is basically afflicting most people. Shadow possession can often afflict most people. So this is what happens is we do not examine the shadow, and so the unclean spirits that are cultivated using this unconsciousness, this unexamined shadow as a substrate, they start to take control. So now the mind is in bondage. So ironically, by not following God's one rule due to a sense of being controlled by God, that one rule, the descending souls have put themselves into absolute bondage where they're completely controlled and subject to billions of rules, with each increasing degree of demonic fragmentation increasing the complexity and therefore the amount of rules that govern the complexity. The soul and mind is in bondage due to the spiritual consequences of hedonic worldliness. The soul had free will to begin with. It was only given one suggestion, really, which was not to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. By exercising its free will to pursue complete anarchy and lawlessness, the soul gradually gave away its free will to demons. And herein lies one of the many funny paradoxes of the world we live in. Demons are the principalities and powers of the 99.9999999% of possible code inputs to the software of our reality that would create dysfunctional software, aka they're of the chaos of the primordial darkness. But ironically, the chaos creates the bondage. It creates the subjugation and the fragmentation that leads to trillions of laws being imposed and the free will being taken away. God as the law, the Tao, the Logos Spermatikos that allows harmony by insisting upon the 0.0000001% of valid, harmonious inputs of lines of code into our reality, warding off the 99.9% of primordial chaos, actually leads to free will. God is the way to freedom and control over your own mind. One of Pluto's big significations in astrology is control, but people talk of it as being like tyranny, controlling regimes, being controlling in relationships, like a Scorpio being controlling. I would argue that's an expression of octave collapse of Pluto into Mars. And octave collapse of the outer planets is usually the case because people can't relate to the divine and the inward. They have to relate it to the outwardness of the world. Yeah, this is most seen in octave collapse. I've talked about octave collapse of Neptune into Venus. We want the experience of love, but we don't go inward to the universality that allows us to express love universally, kind of like the beautiful love of God that embraces all of his creation equally. By going inward to the core of our being, we look outward to find a particular fragment of reality. And the act of going outward, by the way, by its nature, creates the opposite of singularity, right? So we have the Big Bang and the Big Crunch. Those are two cosmological models for the creation of the universe. And in the Big Crunch, we have everything moving back inward into a singularity. And then we have the Big Bang. But in the Big Bang, it's this outward expansion into what in Taoism, in the Tao Te Ching, is called 10,000 things. By moving outward, we are creating fragmentation. We're creating individual fractures of the mirror. But with the Big Crunch coming back into a singularity, the mirror that is God is just one mirror. It's just one thing. And kind of in a sense, if you put two mirrors across from each other, like if you ever been like a hotel room, you have like two mirrors that are across from each other. Or if you see like in your like medicine cabinet, you put the medicine cabinet out and it reflects against the mirror on the wall. It's like an infinite regress, infinite expanse. And that's basically, in my opinion, what the universe is as a Big Bang and an ever expanding entity. It's kind of like two mirrors. It's the mirror of God faced against itself. And that creates infinite outward expansion. As it expands outward, that second mirror begins to fragment. And it's fracture, and that becomes the innumerable things of the universe. But it's the opposite of unity. It's the opposite of non-duality. It's fragmenting into trillions of things. And so, yeah, we're looking when Neptune octave collapses into Venus, we're looking outward at a particular fracture of God. We find this one person, and we express our love that way. So that's octave collapse of Neptune into Venus. We're looking outward. When we look outward, it's by nature fragmenting, and it's a lower expression. It's not divine. Okay. When Pluto octave collapses into Mars, people try to exert their will on other people to control them in a way that feels better. But when sublimated and transfigured, Mars exalted to the divine station of Pluto gives you control over your own mind. My screen just turned off. Oh my God, what are we doing here today, please? Um, by yeah, gives you control over your own mind. By exercising the demons via inward confrontation, then you have the control over your own mind that gives you free will, and it puts you at the wheel of your own ship. And that's a good place to start. We talked about where this whole thing began. We were together as one with God, and then we wanted to experience division and fragmentation. And so the Uranian impulse of rebellion made us eat this fruit that gave us a dualistic nature. Now we're Saturn and Sun. From that yin and yang, we have 10,000 things, like the Tao Te Ching says. From the one comes two, from the Tao comes one, from the one comes two, from the two comes three, from the three comes 10,000 things, all embracing yin and yang. And now, via our duality, via our desire to pursue the good, which very often means to us the pleasurable, the enjoyable, the happy, the joyous, and to avoid the negative, to avoid the unpleasant, to disavow the negative, to disavow the ugly sides of life. Now we're in this hedonistic paradigm, and the world gives us all of these ways that we can express this hedonism. We perpetually lust after things that feel good, and we disavow the things that are unpleasant and feel bad. And this is going to bring us to a state of being animals. I say, to avoid pain, the demonically subjugated mind simplifies itself, still according to that hedonic pleasure principle of avoiding pain and pursuing worldly pleasure. Inevitably, it becomes more like an animal until it actually becomes an animal. The animal mind is lost. Its level of consciousness is so dense, dull, and at the level of low vibrational earth that it can't exercise its ability to actively use its will to interact with the contents of its own mind. And so it just gets worse and worse by following its mechanical impulses of pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain. It develops an extreme deficiency in plutonic expression. It evolves, but only mechanically, in a meaningless way. The soul, passing through the billions of forms of animal, plant, and mineral, has added too much potential energy into one side of the pendulum. And like all planets in astrology, there's an opposite planet that backswings. Whatever energy you put into Venus, there's an equal and opposite backswing of Mars. Whatever energy you put into the Sun, there's an equal and opposite backswing of Saturn. This is true. If we get so friggin' attached to our summer lovin', our summer of fun, it hurts all the much more when winter comes around. The more we put into the sun, the more it hurts when Saturn comes around. We're adding potential energy into the sun. The pendulum's going to swing back. It's going to swing that much harder towards Saturn. We love hard. When you love hard, the conflict hurts all that much more. When you put all your energy into Venus, when that pendulum backswings into Mars, that Mars is going to hit like a freaking train. You love hard, you're going to hate hard. Facts. Okay, so when the soul has seeped itself so deeply into the earth over billions of lifetimes, right, as animals, inevitably the backswing to Pluto must occur because these are opposites. And this is what hell is. The escape into external distractions doesn't work anymore. All the contents of the shadow are experienced without defense mechanisms. Not just the shadow of your personal mind, but the shadow of every one of your lifetimes and the karma it contains. Yes, this is true. This is a consequence of the terrestrial energy, the energy of the earth. It makes you more dull, and it makes you so external that you can't go within to hear God anymore. And put it another way, you can't hear your higher self. So the pull to work productively with your own mind, to evolve, is gone now. So it's one of the great blessings of what God is that when we choose to seep ourselves so deeply into worldly things, so much that we become an animal and we basically become uh, dumb, blind, and deaf to God at all, the very nature of the Logos Pragmaticos and the harmonious, balanced structure of reality, we seeped ourselves so deeply into earth via an expression of our free will, which was then um, stripped from us via the demons that we have allowed in as a consequence of our exertion of our free will, which then subjugated us and put us into bondage. The backswing, the potential energy that we put into the earth, once that pendulum swings back, it's going to swing all the way back to Pluto. So now it's all Pluto, no Earth. And basically, what this does, and I put a definition here, hell has two functions: to replace demonic possession with external confrontation, and to burn away all the meaningless, high density animal karma until there's enough intelligence to consciously ask for the experience of hell to be buffered via the terrestrial earth energy that was released via the burned animal karma. The amount of terrestrial energy left is only enough to offer one step back versus Pluto's two step forward. Let me explain that. Um, we keep associating Pluto with alchemy, and really it is the alchemical planet. But funny enough, in the traditional astrology, Mars is associated with alchemists. That was one of William Lilly's correspondences. So there is a deep connection to Mars and its higher octave and alchemy. So this is the flame, and hell is a place of fire. It is a good way of thinking about it. I don't think that these experiences, psychedelic almost experiences with people, that they can have a sense of what hell is before, and they can return Earth to speak about it. I don't think it's without merit. I mean, hell is essentially an alchemical cauldron. All you have all of this lead, and that's basically what the descending soul journey is all about. Uh, by following the pleasure principle and the hedonism, the shadow just keeps becoming bigger and bigger and more dense. Right? Essentially, we keep lusting after things that feel good, and all the negative side of life we disavow. We push it down, and it just gets bigger and bigger. These are the basic dynamics of what Earth and Pluto are all about. I've talked about it in previous videos. Earth is all about taking things that are outside of yourself, looking outward to things that are outside of yourself so that you can bury them down inside of yourself. And Pluto has to deal with digging deep into the core of yourself to bring the contents of the things that are hidden to the surface. And this is basically what's happening with the demons as well. This is the Saturn, the terrestrial Saturn, versus the Plutonic alchemical Saturn. For descending souls, their hedonic nature and their lack of guidance, which would be represented through Pluto. Pluto is basically God's hand of guidance back to God. When that guiding hand is not there, when God is like, okay, I'm not even going to give suggestions anymore. It's not even rules; it's just suggestions. Like little push here, little push there. You let the soul explore, and wherever it ends up, it ends up. Inevitably, the hedonism makes it pursue the world, the outwardness. And so this is by feeding the shadow as a result of the disavowal of the negative side of life and the addiction to the pleasurable side of life, this becomes the terrestrial Saturn. In other words, we're burying it down. That's what we keep doing is we consume the external world, and all of the negative sides of the world that we experience, we bury it down, we bury it down, we bury it down, don't want to face it. Here we have the absence of the ability to assume responsibility. This is something we see in Descending Souls a lot. Even when they know that they did something wrong, they say, I didn't do that. So they can't take responsibility a lot of times. But a lot more common is just the reality that they are under spiritual bondage. By pushing everything down, they basically experience shadow possession in Jungian terms. These unclean spirits act through them, and this is where we get blackouts. This is where we get unconsciousness. The earth has a lot to do with unconsciousness, but not like the collective unconscious, not like the deep levels of the mind. It has to do with not putting your sights on things. It has to do with unconsciousness in the sense of turning your gaze away from the unconscious and looking outward to the external world. And as a result of that, you remain an unconscious person. A conscious person is essentially the Plutonic, one who faces the contents of the shadow. So if what we see here, this picture of we keep avoiding the negative side of life until we are under all of this spiritual bondage. I think I just went Spanish there for a second. I think I'm channeling Bashar here. When we keep doing that, we get under spiritual bondage. We, once again, like I said, we try to simplify our own consciousness even more as an act of escapism. This is the young soul. This is the the child's cowardice. We want to avoid the negative side of life. We don't want to face it. And so we start to feel pain. I mean, you can't just keep stuffing stuff down. Eventually, the negativity is so overwhelming. But the adult, mature soul thing to do would be, okay, well, I have stored up all of this gunk and filth in my own shadow. I'm going to face it. I'm going to transform it via alchemy. I'm going to transform the lead. The child, the young soul, does not have the spiritual maturity to do this. And so they perform another act of escapism by simplifying their own consciousness. So in other words, they sink even deeper into the earth density by becoming an animal. It's not I want to face the contents of my shadow so that I can regain consciousness. It's I want even less consciousness so I'm even more numb to the stuff that's going on. It's an even greater pathology. And as a result, we have the soul turning into an animal. And at this point, the soul is basically lost. They're guided not by any particular spirit, but by their own hedonism. The animal mind pursues the pleasurable and avoids the painful, and it leads to all manner of fragmentation and confusion that causes it to amass enormous amounts of negative karma. This is covered in the video on my homepage. I don't know what the name of that. You know what I mean? Your display video, the 100-Day Existences video. Yeah. So the animal mind can't help but get worse and worse and worse, and accumulate more karma, more karma. The impulse now is ingrained. That soul now is instinctively incarnating into simpler and simpler forms of consciousness to avoid the karma. At this point, it's purely instinctive. After so many lifetimes, this impulse at the center of yourself becomes instinctive. And so the soul gets simpler and simpler until it's no longer even an animal. It's plant life. And then to a mineral. But, like I said, everything is a pendulum. This is an inevitable fact of reality. And this is something that was almost traumatizing for me because philosophically, I had it all figured out. I had life all figured out. I said to myself, well, what's the meaning of life? Well, to feel good. What I want out of life is to just feel good as much as possible and to avoid pain as much as possible. Seems logical. It's just what our body is telling us. But I was confronted with the reality that everything counterbalances. So if we derive pleasure from things that are outside of ourselves, the universe brings in something equally negative to strip away that attachment. So the clinging to suck the pleasure from something, and then the ripping out of the roots of the thing that causes the pleasure is creating the pleasure and the pain. And it's always in equal amounts. Maybe not in your own lifetime, but over the course of multiple lifetimes. Everything is a pendulum. So this is what hell is. Now the earth has lost its grasp. The earth gives way to the Pluto. It's basically God reaching back in and pulling you back out of the mess you've made of yourself. Not in a way, because God's not a guy. God's not a character. This is more like a force of education. In fact, there's a great definition of the logos spermaticos I'd like to share here. But first, I need to turn my computer on, and I need to fill in enough dead air to fill in the time that it takes to get there. Yeah, we're about to get to what hell is all about and the function of hell. But first, I want to talk about this. Logos spermaticos, meaning seminal logos or seed-like reason, is a concept in Stoic philosophy and later Christian thought that refers to the principle of reason or order that is present in all things and allows for their development and creation. Right. So what this is wrapped up all in one. This is a force of creation. That's the spermaticos, and the word, the reason that kind of like a sentence has a structure to it that allows you to discern meaning. This story of life that's being told, that's a good way of putting it, story of life. It is a creation that is a story such that it can be divided and described through words so that it could be understood. This is all about understanding God. God is a mirror. We fracture all of the different fragments of the mirror, and then we put all the pieces back together. And in that way, we understand what God is. And that's what really this whole thing was all about to begin with. So yeah, we backswing. What's it like to have no earth? Earth is kind of like our defense mechanism. It's burying stuff down. It's not facing things. Well, that's not necessarily always bad. I mean, for our feeble human minds, if we didn't have any defense mechanisms, we would probably be brutalized by our own psyche. It would just be completely traumatizing. We want to have some way of buffering challenging experiences such that we can absorb and integrate the healing of that trauma. So defense mechanisms are not necessarily this terrible thing. I mean, they can become pathological, but very often they're just there to buffer the experience of challenging experiences, challenging emotional experiences. Well, basically that's what hell is. Hell is you don't have that anymore. We basically became animals as a form of defense mechanism. We couldn't handle the challenging contents of the human mind, the complexities associated with the intellect and the ability to richly understand the world around us, and we ran away. We buried it down until our own consciousness became so buried down that it became mechanical and instinctive and low vibrational animal state. And so what happens when you keep burying things down? You can even see this in your own life. If you keep burying stuff down, eventually you have explosive meltdowns. And hell is an explosive meltdown. But it's one of the biggest explosive meltdowns you could possibly imagine because it's billions of lifetimes of pushing stuff down and now the complete failure of all defense mechanisms. So everything you see outside of yourself is a projection of your mind. This is true. But when the mind becomes so perverted, and so perverse, with such the shadow is so friggin' enormous and it's never been addressed. When the defense mechanisms are gone, that projection becomes a hellscape. So this is a place of rape, torture, and agony. And for the most part, its primary function is to burn off all the animal karma. I mean, how does a descending soul become an ascending soul, right? That is the question. How do we go from being polarized towards the world towards being polarized towards God, right? The unity to spirit. That is one of the great questions: is what really separates us? I mean, I have people ask me sometimes when I'm talking about ascending soul, descending soul, and it's clear I'm talking to a descending soul, and they look at me, eyes blinking, you know what I mean, puppy eyes, like, am I an ascending soul? And I give them the basic, my definition of what that would entail, being that when you have traumatic experiences, that spur on spiritual awakening. That's like my favorite thing to go to. But one thing I like to ask them is, what is an ascending soul? Like, well, you think that descending soul is just bad and ascending soul is just good? Like, I can prove to you using your own value system that being an ascending soul is something that you don't even want. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, do you want to live in the winter of the soul where everything outside of yourself that you value, your family, your friends, money, health, security, all of these things are taken away from you in a way that you basically don't have any defense mechanisms and you have to face things head on? They're like, God, no. And I'm like, there you go. You actually like being a descending soul. You don't even want to, you want the title of being an ascending soul. It makes you feel special. You like the title of being a chosen one. The reality of it is deeply horrifying. Well, let me not get all over the place here. There is this two sides of the same coin element of ascending soul and descending soul. I mean, they are part of the same cycle after all, and they are kind of moving in lockstep a little bit. Here's a big point I want to bring up, is descending souls and ascending souls have the exact same level of connection to demons. Like, what? Yeah, chosen ones. Chosen ones have the same level of connection to demons that descending souls have. Okay, slow down. Now you're losing me. You're telling me that these people that are like possessed have the same level of connection to me, somebody who the demons don't act through me. I'm perfectly conscious of everything I do. I don't have these blackouts. I don't act out and lash out and don't remember. What do you mean? You have the same level of connection, but here is the critical difference. It comes back to the Earth and Pluto. Pluto is what externalizes the demons so that you can face them. In the Earth, they're just in your unconscious, acting through you. And this is the purpose of hell. Hell is there, A, to process all of that animal karma, which is most of your karma. I mean, if you think about it, you got billions of freaking lifetimes as an animal, and only a few of being a human. That hell purges all of that animal karma, which is all meaningless karma, by the way. There's no evolutionary lessons for animals. It's all just like animals eating each other's babies and clawing each other's eyes out. It's just all meaningless torture and suffering. Physical, dense. It's not ethereal. It's not at the level of spirit and consciousness. It's not the evolution of consciousness. It's meaningless mechanical evolution. And so we got to process all that karma first, because this is one of the properties of God. God is perfectly fair. All debts are paid. And that is what hell is for. Hell is mostly for that animal karma, which is most of your karma. But then we get to a point at which you have enough consciousness to start working productively at the more ethereal karma that can lead to the evolution of consciousness again. In other words, one of Pluto's significations, I think is underrated signification, is meaning. We can see this in Scorpio. Scorpios seek meaningful experiences. Their level of quality control for the people in their lives is so unrelentingly extreme that they can test somebody for like years before they can even, you know what I mean, bring them into the fold. It's because they're seeking meaningful experiences. Everything has to mean something. There is a perpetual pursuit of meaning, particularly in Scorpios. Why I say it's not really like a Mars thing. It's not an Aries thing. Scorpios see that things need to be meaningful. Your words need to be meaningful. You need to choose your words carefully because everything you say needs to have meaning. Well, Pluto, more broadly, is associated with meaning, things being having meaning. And so Pluto is this pull back to the ethereal where consciousness has a meaningful relationship with evolution. And the Earth is the opposite. Matter is meaningless. Matter is meaningless. So we're going to see this in the body. We have the clay that the body is made out of, and then we have the spirit that inhabits the body. Well, tell me which one's the valuable one here. Is it the conscious sentient experience of what it's like to be in the body that's important? Or is it the friggin' clay that the body is made out of? The clay itself has no meaning. It's the relation of the consciousness and the spirit to that clay that is the meaningful part. And that's the difference between the high density and then the ethereal. The spirit is high density, or the spirit is highly ethereal, and the matter, the clay, is high density, but it's matter, it's clay, it's meaningless. And so, in a similar sense, when we're becoming animals, we're sinking deeper into this carnal, physical level of reality. Everything becomes more meaningless. All the karma does not lead to any evolution of consciousness. It's all just meaningless, crude physical sensations. Well, hell is mostly there to as a direct experience of unmitigated Pluto. No Earth to protect you. All of that animal karma is very rapidly resolved via the experience, the outward experience of everything that was done. Pluto is confrontation. Earth is escapism and cowardice. Escapism into the physical outward world. And so, it's going into the outward world and stuffing your face with it. And Pluto is going within and bringing it to the surface. So in hell, all of your deeds are brought to the surface. You encounter the Plutonic Saturn. The alchemical Saturn is by far the most painful experience. But it's also the primary engine that brings you back to God. This is alchemy. Alchemy is the Plutonic, it's the transformative relationship to lead, which is Saturn, the shadow, alchemizing the shadow. And so we confront the animal karma, we process all of that, and then we get back to the point of being at the level of a human being again. And I say that this is very rapidly, but from kind of like my 108 Existences video that I'm featuring from his channel on my homepage, it's experienced excruciatingly slow because it's just a fact that, take for example, if you've ever done a plank, I love doing planks, I think the exercise, that 1 minute of planking feels like an hour because when you're going through painful things, it feels much slower. And hell is so extreme that it feels as long as how long it took to go through those billions of lifetimes. When in reality, the speed of it is, it's like 1/trillionth the speed of it. So it's 1/trillionth the speed, but it feels like the same amount of time. It's a funny little detail there. Because Pluto makes everything much faster. I mean, Earth just slows shit down. I mean, everything's so dense it can't move. Pluto releases all of this energy. Pluto is what, in death, penetrates into the mortal coil and removes the spirit so that it's outside. Right? Remember, Pluto penetrates into things and then it brings the contents of what's buried underneath to the outside. And so we get to the human level of hell. So we've shed all of our animal karma. We've evolved back to, basically, hell is a place of rapid evolution via the unmitigated experience of Saturn. It's the experience of our Saturn, the experience of our shadow with no defense mechanisms, no buffering, no I'll do it later. Now, having processed those billions of lifetimes of animal lifetimes, alchemized it, we've released enough. So in other words, that earth energy was kind of like spent before. Now we have experienced a backswing of the karma, so now we've released a lot of it again. The human mind, now pursuing relief from the excruciating pain, I mean, really, like, funny enough, the longer you spend in hell, the more painful it becomes, because your mind is evolved so that you can appreciate the complexities of what's happening to you. So when you get back to the point of being a human being, your sensitivity and everything is so high definition that at the same time you develop the ability to bargain with God, again, which you couldn't do as an animal, but also you're experiencing the suffering in a way that's way more intense than before. And so now at the level of a human being, you make the deal with God. This is that humbling moment. Say, I was wrong. I mean, you'd probably be screaming it, in the pit of agony. I thought that you were controlling me and putting me under bondage with your one rule, which wasn't really a rule, but it's very clear that you were protecting me this whole time from the 99.99999% of chaotic possibilities that are subjugating, which are demonic. And so, can you please rescue me from hell? And God says, I'm already doing that. I'm purifying your consciousness. And then the mind says, yeah, but this is the worst agony I've ever experienced. Can you bring some of that earth back so that we can buffer this experience of hell over multiple lifetimes? And God says, I knew you'd say that, but it's got to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. What's 1 step back? 1 step back is the earth. Say we're gonna slow things down. We're going to become a little worldly, but then we're going to do 2 steps forward of evolution. This is called spiritual awakening, and this is what an ascending soul or a chosen one is. So, yeah, if you ever wonder why there is such a tension, like a critical friction between us as chosen ones and descending souls, it's because we're separated by billions of lifetimes. We're in a sense, we're the same because we're part of the same cycle, but we're so different in our energy because there's billions of lifetimes separating us. We are old souls, right? We've gone through things that they haven't even gone through yet. Yeah, and that's the other thing I'd like to correct about chosen ones versus descending souls as well. Obviously, the point of God is to have us experience separations and fragmentations such that we play multiple characters in a scene, and by experiencing every character in the scene, we have a better understanding of God by putting all the puzzle pieces together. And like a terrible extreme example is I was talking to my HVAC teacher the other day, air conditioning teacher, and he gave the example of Hitler and then the people that unfortunately perished as a result of in a terrible circumstance in the Holocaust. It's like, yeah, that is the extremely negative example, but consciousness experiences every character in that scene, and by coming back together, that entire scene is a way of understanding God through the realities of the world. That's one negative scene. There's also positive scenes. All the different characters that are played in a scene Consciousness experiences them all. They all come back together. They're all like Akashic recorded, and that way you better understand God. And that's basically what evolution is. Um, so yeah, that's what an ascending soul is. What a chosen one is we have chosen, we are from hell. Isn't there so many funny paradoxes? Descending souls are from heaven. We are from hell. I mean, we're all ultimately from heaven, whatever you want to call that. I call it the Ein Sof. And they haven't been to hell yet. We are out of hell. We've chosen to buffer our experience of hell. And as a result, we come back to earth and we return to the scene of the crime. That's what you were doing in hell. Hell is a way of returning to the scene of the crimes. The contents of the shadow, I mean, the Akashic records are found in the planets. So all of the negative, terrible things were stored in Saturn, and in hell, Pluto gave you an unmitigated experience of the shadow. And so you effectively return to the scene of the crime. The samskars, the images, the film reel, was projected outward, but in a way where there was no protection, no defense mechanisms. Now we have an experience of Earth. Now we're back on Earth. We asked for Earth back, so we're no longer in hell. We're back on Earth. And the experience of the Saturn, the karma, it's still predominantly negative. It's 2 steps of evolution versus our 1 step of being worldly. But this is what spiritual awakening is, why everybody says spiritual awakening is like an unpleasant thing. It's filled with loss. We are in the winter of the soul. But, funny enough, there is the summer and winter of the world and the summer and winter of the soul. And the winter of the world, which means all of the worldly things rotting away, leads to the summer of the spirit. One of the many funny little paradoxes, all that yin yang that's flying around everywhere, if you haven't noticed. Worldliness detracts from your spirituality. And spirituality, inwardness, exists in lockstep with the things of the world being torn away. So this is, to be a chosen one, is to basically live in a Saturnian season of your soul, to be in the winter of your soul. If you didn't know, Saturn has to do with winter. It's cold, dark, and dry. When the sun is in the sign of Aquarius, that's called winter, because when the sun's in Aquarius, it's February, which is winter. And when the sun is in Leo, that's called summer, because the sun is in August. So Saturn rules Aquarius, the sun rules Leo. So yeah, we are in the winter of our soul. Here's what I have to say about Saturn. Saturn prunes away imperfections until only enduring things remain. Childish pursuits versus pursuits you can bring into adulthood. It reveals the fragility in things not built to last. Its ultimate punchline, as is discovered by the descending souls in the winter of the soul, I should say by the ascending souls in the winter of the soul, those most intimate with Saturn's energy, is that everything in the world is fragile and untrustworthy. Saturn does teach you fear and lack of trust. It does teach you that. It's one of the big things that a lot of people talk about Saturn teaches you about, is it teaches you fear. And it teaches you that through, where does the fear come from, really? The fear comes from the reality that things that you are attached to are being torn away from you. And it makes you a conservative person. Gives you a scarcity mindset, because Saturn creates scarcity. So it teaches you fear and lack of trust. But it only teaches you lack of trust regarding your ability to have reliance on the comforts and pleasures of the world. Saturn does nothing to create distrust towards spirit and God. In fact, it brings you closer to spirit more than ever before, because dire straits with no one else to lean on or any external things to lean on makes you turn inward to God for support. It's absolutely true. The ascending soul, post-hell, is in the winter of the world. But the winter of the world is the summer of the spirit, the summer of the soul. Actually, just the summer of the spirit. Whereas the descending souls are kind of like in the summer of the world. So these are people that they have a lot of worldly things. They have relationships with their family and their They have relationships with their family, their friends. You know what I mean? They get worldly things that they enjoy, but they're in an extreme state of spiritual decay. And all the while this is happening, we have all of the sub cycles that are occurring. We have the yugas. So we are approaching the Kali Yuga in its fullest form, kind of like in the cusp of Dvapara Yuga and Kali Yuga. And so most people alive today are accelerating to a rate of unprecedented spiritual decay and unprecedented worldliness. So it's basically the yugas are related to the seasons of the soul and the spirit. So people in the Kali Yuga are experiencing the Saturn of the spirit. It's the degradation of the spirit. Whereas the ascending souls are experiencing the degradation and the decay of worldliness, which is leading to the sun of the spirit. See how this all works? That's why I say in my other videos, the descending souls obsessively spend their solar samskars on worldly things. They're bringing the sun to the earth, but they don't realize that they're bringing the Saturn with it, and that's what creates all those problems. So one other thing I'd like to touch on is that descending souls and chosen ones doesn't mean predator and prey, because we do return to the scene of the crime. And we were doing that in hell, but we chose to buffer it by returning to the world. So we have the same level of connection to demons. They're just experienced externally. In hell, we have Pluto tattooed or engraved into our soul. And that's one of the key differences between descending souls and ascending souls. Ascending souls have no level of possession. Chosen ones are not possessed in any sense. That does not mean that chosen ones and ascending souls are earth angels, and that does not mean that chosen ones and ascending souls always do good things. But one thing I've never heard from somebody who's a chosen one or an ascending soul, certainly not in my own life, is, oh, I don't remember doing that. All around me constantly are people that do that, because most people are descending souls. They have blackouts. They are under spiritual bondage. So things act through them. Ultimately, that is a union with demons, so it remains part of their own karma, because a mirror is a mirror, and if a demon is merged with you, that demon's now part of your reflection. So you are going to face that. But in hell, Pluto's all about uprooting things. Pluto is what rips out the tendrils and the roots, and these demons have burrowed their way into your being with all their little roots, like a virus, and it's Pluto's job in hell to rip them out. Pluto is Hades. Pluto is the lord of the underworld. The underworld is the unconscious. And yeah, interesting detail about Pluto. Pluto has one sign in the zodiac, and it's Scorpio, which has the glyph of the scorpion. And we have certain talismans throughout history that their primary purpose is to strike fear into demons. For example, in the Solomonic Pentacles, we have the fifth pentacle of Mars. Mars, of course, being the lower octave of Pluto. And it bears the image of a scorpion. And this is said to strike fear into demons. Much earlier in the De Quindecim Stellis, the Hermes on the 15 fixed stars, Behenian fixed stars, we have the Antares talisman. And one of the images of the Antares talisman uses the image of the scorpion, because Antares is a fixed star in the constellation of Scorpio. So yeah, these are talismans that have been used throughout history for the purpose of striking fear into demons. It's like people think that Pluto is like this super dark, terrible, evil planet. It's just the opposite. I mean, the reason I think this is, when is a demon the most demonic? And to me, the answer is during exorcism. If you ever see the movie The Exorcist, when you're exorcising the demon, that's when they're all, you know, that's when they're all freaking out. And exorcism is what Pluto does. Pluto causes you to confront the contents of the shadow, and by integrating the contents of the shadow, that demon is no more and it's exorcised. Well, that act of bringing the demonic contents, the shadowy contents to the surface, is what brings out the demon to experience it, to confront it. And people call that demonic. Well, no, that's just the medicine. The demons love the world. Demons love Earth. That's the home of demons. In the Bible, it says this is his kingdom. Right? This is referring to Satan, which basically is Saturn. Talking about the devil. And yeah, basically. So essentially, demons love the world. Yeah, I talk about it all the time, but in Elizabethan World Picture, what's that? E.W. Tilliard talked about how people in the medieval period and Renaissance believed that demons made up their bodies of the earth's dirty air, whereas angels made up their body of the ether that's beyond the sphere of the moon. Out there is the ether, the air of the heavens. And then demons made up their bodies of the air of the earth. So demons love the earth. This is the home of demons. Pluto is the opposite of the earth. And so we see that the image of the scorpion strikes fear into demons. Demons hate fucking Pluto. They hate Pluto because Pluto is responsible for exorcism. Pluto is was responsible for transforming demonic nature into heavenly nature. And this is a process of exorcism. And guess what? Exorcism is a dark process. It's the confrontation with the demon at its most intense. It's like treating an infected wound. Treating an infected wound is excruciatingly fucking painful. Infected. Your shadow is infected with demons. Via these wounds. What we do is we get psychologically wounded, and then we push it down where the sun can't disinfect it, and then it festers and rots. Pluto, like a scalpel, digs into that infection, throws all of that disinfectant, hydrogen peroxide on that motherfucker, and it burns. It burns worse than any part of the process, even the cut, the getting infected process. The most painful part of that entire process is the disinfectant, throwing the hydrogen peroxide on the wound. That's what hell is. Hell is the hydrogen peroxide on the infected wounds that you've created in yourself and you've buried down. So yeah, that's one thing I wanted to bring up, is that demons fucking hate Pluto more than anything, because one of the biggest ironies is that this planet that's all supposedly dark is the greatest agent of purification that there friggin' is. It's a planet of alchemy. It's what renders everything perfect and pure and sublime. This is a Scorpio's quality control, making sure that only pure things can pass into their lives. Everything needs to be pure and meaningful. Okay, we've talked about a lot here. One thing I'd like to talk about is Carl Jung. Carl Jung was basically an OG chosen one. He, in his Red Book, and there's a great channel called Book and Hearth. The title of the video, I believe, is something to the effect of the book where Carl Jung goes to hell, or something like that. And I borrowed a number of screenshots from her slides. So shout out to this content creator. She did a really amazing video. You should really watch this video. It's so freaking good. But essentially, this is the truth that hell exists in the unconscious at all times, in the shadow. But basically, when Carl Jung went within into his own shadow through the various techniques of doing so, he penetrated so deep into the shadow that he actually got to the collective unconscious, which is the realm of Uranus, where he started to experience the union of opposites. Union of opposites, this does appear in ancient alchemical texts, conjunctio, but nobody makes as much of an emphasis on it as Carl Jung, which is a very huge portion of what his entire psychological philosophy is about, but particularly what the Red Book's about. And it had to do with his experiences of going deep into the contents of his mind, past all the Saturn, past all the shadow, to peek out the other side. And he came to a number of conclusions. So on the screen here is going to be some of those quotations from the Red Book. And he says, "How strange it sounds to me to call you a child," is referring to his own soul, his own deep mind. "How strange it sounds to me to call you a child, you who still hold the all without end in your hand. I went on the way of the day, and you went invisibly with me, putting the pieces together meaningfully and letting me see the whole in each part." Yes, this is what the unconscious is constantly doing. It is absorbing all the various different bits of information that are around it, and it's bringing it together and it's synthesizing it into epiphanies. It's a very Uranus sort of dynamic, is what happens in the unconscious, is we have a convergent network of information that's coming together to a singularity, and via the synthesis of all of the information that's there, bringing it together, it pops out as an epiphany or realization. This is when information is registered at the level of the unconscious. And this is also what's happening with God. This is our reason for being here alive at all, is we're experiencing God as a puzzle where we have all these pieces and we're experiencing all the different fragments and pieces, and we're putting it back together to understand God, because we can only understand things by contrast. Next quote, "Sixth night, my soul leads me into the desert of my own self. I did not think that my soul is a desert, a barren, hot desert, dusty and without drink. Why is myself a desert? Have I lived too much outside of myself in men and events?" Here we go. So why is my soul a desert? Have I lived too much outside of myself in men and events? And the answer is yes. When we pursue worldliness, our spirit suffers. They are in distinction to each other. This is the essential conflict between the Earth and Pluto, the conflict between outwardness and inwardness. And so when you tend to the garden outside of yourself too much, the garden inside of yourself becomes malnourished and everything rots away. I read on. "In the desert, the solitary is relieved of care and therefore turns his whole life to the sprouting garden of his soul, which can flourish only under a hot sun. In his garden, the delicious red fruit grows that bears swelling sweetness under a tight skin." That was an interesting one. He said, the sprouting garden of his soul, which can flourish only under a hot sun. The sun, we remember, is what gives us sight. In fact, the first image of the photon was ever taken recently, and I swear it looks like a friggin' eyeball. We have the Eye of Horus, which is a solar talisman. The sun has to do with vision and sight, and making things knowable at the level of the conscious mind. And so by putting your eyes on the soul, the garden of your soul can grow. All right, our next slide. "I see a gray rock face along which I sink into the great depths. I stand in black dirt up to my ankles in a dark cave. Shadows sweep over me. I am seized by fear, but I know I must go in. I crawl through a narrow crack in the rock and reach an inner cave whose bottom is covered with black water." Okay, this is the entry into the shadow. Black water. This is the waters of the shadow. This is Saturn. This is the lead that is in your shadow. And he continues in this vein of visiting the cave. "There I see, and a terror seizes me, curled up serpents on the dark rock walls, striving toward the depths where the sun shines. 1,000 serpents crowd around, veiling the sun. Deep night falls, a red stream of blood, thick red blood springs up, surging for a long time, then ebbing. I am seized by fear." Isn't it so amazing how so much of our world can be astrologically encoded? Saturn rules serpents, particularly dragons. In fact, one of the traditional astrological talismans for Saturn is a kind of like a reindeer almost, riding a dragon with a scythe. So those are the serpents, and then they're veiling the sun. The sun, we say again, is the vision, is the conscious mind. And so the shadow makes us turn our gaze away from itself. The Saturn is the ugly aspects of our mind and the ugly aspects of the soul, and in that way, the snakes, the Saturn, veils our vision of the shadow. This is not just a testament to how ugly the shadow can be, but also how vast it is, particularly compared to the experience of our conscious mind, what can be perceived by our conscious mind. And he's seized by fear. Saturn brings about fear. Hell, this is where we get to Jung's definition of hell, having his, I wouldn't say hallucinogenic, but hypnagogic state where he goes into his own mind to experience the contents of the shadow and unconscious. He says, hell is when you know that your having to is also a wanting to, and that you yourself are responsible for it. Hell is when you know that everything serious that you planned with yourself is also laughable, that everything fine is also brutal, that everything good is also bad, that everything high is also low, that everything pleasant is also shameful. But the deepest hell is when you realize that hell is also no hell, but a cheerful heaven. Not a heaven in itself, but in this respect a heaven, and in that respect a hell. This is basically the point at which Carl Jung has gone so deeply into his own shadow that he's past the Saturn and he started to penetrate into the Uranus, into the collective unconscious, where the union of opposites can be experienced. And so, just to break this down, hell is when you know that your having to is also a wanting to. That is an interesting way of putting it. Is kind of like the battle between free will and determinism. This is basically the realization of the non-duality of determinism and free will. And that they're both simultaneously true in some kind of weird form of compatibilism. And then the necessity of the evolutionary journey that the Logos Pragmaticos promotes. The Logos Pragmaticos is the harmony. It's the meticulous law and order that allows for a liberated and free experience of the world. So it's simultaneously law and liberation. And you yourself are responsible for it. That's the Saturn right there, the taking responsibility for everything that happens. Hell is when you know that everything serious that you plan with yourself is also laughable. So this is the Uranus once again. I talk about Uranus, the DMT gestures, showing you the absurdity of everything that is, the absurdity of life. That everything fine is also brutal. Everything good is also bad. Everything high is also low. So he's gone so deeply into himself that he has been permitted access to Eden. Right? So we have Saturn, which is guarding the gates of Eden, which is our shadow. He's penetrated so deeply into the shadow that he's returned to the scene of the crime, which is the original sin, which is the eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And now he's starting to have the experience of the union of opposites, conjunctio. And he speaks of hell and heaven being the same. Well, Eden was heaven, but he's experiencing it as hell. Isn't that something? Yeah, he's experiencing Eden as hell. And he says, but the deepest hell is when you realize that hell is also no hell, but a cheerful heaven, not a heaven in itself, but in this respect a heaven, and in that respect a hell. So he's having the experience of union of opposites, so he's undoing the act of eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And so this is the damage that duality did. Is we always wanted to go back to Eden. We always wanted to undo this original sin. That's what Jesus was here for in the friggin' first place, is to bring us back to heaven by allowing us to overcome original sin through him. And now that we're back in heaven, it feels like hell because we view heaven through a dualistic lens. That's profound. Now that even if we went to heaven, it would seem like hell because the experience of heaven is when the entire shadow has been integrated. So he's getting a peek into Eden. By getting a peek into Eden, it looks like hell because he's still surrounded by all of this Saturn. He's mired in duality. He's mired in shadow. I mean, the fact that these concepts are still with him, the concepts of all these dualities, even to think in those words is to turn Eden into hell. It's when you have a visceral, immediate experience where there is no distinction or duality. I mean, even the use of words is implicitly dualistic because sentences can only work by creating distinctions. It's fragmentations of the unity of God. That's how we know tree from not tree. If you think like a monkey in like the jungle, being like, well, you're pointing at it, which means you're pointing at that in contrast to everything around it. So the act of even saying words is a deep act of fragmentation. I mean, Mercury as HUD is on the pillar of severity, which is the pillar of form, which is the pillar of Saturn. Saturn's at the top of the pillar of form. So Saturn, Mars, and Mercury have to do with separating things and divorce and distinctions. And so by taking a peek at Eden, by taking a peek at the Uranian and the Neptunian through the Saturnian lens, which creates dualities, he's horrified by what he sees. But if there were no words, if there were no belief systems, if Uranus came by and knocked down all those belief systems, then Eden would be experienced as a heaven. Yeah, so that was a good breakdown. Go to our next slide. As a drop in the ocean, you take part in the current, ebb and flow. You swell slowly on the land and slowly sink back again in interminably slow breaths. You wander vast distances in blurred currents and wash up on strange shores, not knowing how you got there. You mount the billows of huge storms and are swept back again into the depths. You saw that it was the life of the whole and the death of each individual. You felt yourself entwined in the collective death, from death to the earth's deepest place, from death in your own strangely breathing depths. This is referring to the unity of consciousness. We are experienced as a multitude of various different souls, but really in death, we rejoin the chorus, which is the ocean of consciousness where there is no distinction. We're not trillions of droplets of water. The ocean is not trillions of droplets of water. It's one thing, all combined as one, because the universal love of God combines all as one. And this ocean crashes upon the shore and then recedes back into the ocean. So that's what reincarnation basically is we die and we rejoin the unity of consciousness, but then we wash back ashore as the individuals to have a dualistic, separative experience of God. We continuously eat that fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We eat it, and then we're rejoined with the unity, and then we eat it again. And this is the evolution of consciousness. Is God infinitely expanding in an infinite amount of ways, and us constantly experiencing the distinctions and the puzzle pieces of God. God is a mirror separated, fractured into its shattered pieces, and then putting it back together, unifying it again to understand it. And so, yeah, this is what life's all about: is the waves of the non-dual consciousness crashing on the shore and then receding back into the unity. Jung says the image of God has a shadow that is just as great as itself. That is essentially life and death, is rejoining the unity of consciousness and then experiencing duality. Saturn is the god of this world, like a lot of videos say, because our experience is a dualistic prison. It's not Eden. It's everything experienced outside of Eden. That's what life is. This video is fucking awesome, dude. This is going to be one of my best videos. I myself am a murderer, Carl Jung says. I myself am a murderer and murdered, sacrifice and sacrificed. This is the experience of God through the various scenes of life. In one lifetime, we can be a predator. Another lifetime, we can be prey. In one lifetime, we can be a benefactor. In another lifetime, we can be a beneficiary. And another lifetime, we'll just be a bystander. We experience the scene from every possible vantage point. And by bringing all those vantage points back together, we have understanding of God. Whereas before, we didn't have any distinctions. We can only understand hot through cold. So, yeah, the fragments of the mirror allow us to understand what the mirror even is. That is God. Carl Jung says, you, man, should not seek the feminine in women, but seek and recognize it in yourself as you possess it from the beginning. This is Carl Jung's Anima and Animus, which has again to do with the running theme of union of opposites. Carl Jung says, we need the coldness of death to see clearly. Life wants to live and to die, to begin and to end. You are not forced to live eternally, but you can also die, since there is a will in you for both. Life and death must strike a balance in your existence. Today's men need a large slice of death, since too much incorrectness lives in them, and too much correctness died in them. What stays in balance is correct. What disturbs balance is incorrect. Yes, this is the union of opposites, once again, that Carl Jung, I think, was informed by Heraclitus. This is a representation of the powers of the zodiac, which are 12 signs which have opposing forces, opposing planets that act as counterbalances to each other. Venus acts as counterbalance to Mars. The Sun acts as counterbalance to Uranus. Earth acts as counterbalance to Pluto. Mercury acts as counterbalance to Jupiter. And what disturbs balance is incorrect. All right, our last slide. Because I wanted to give birth to God, Carl Jung says. Because I wanted to give birth to my God, I also wanted evil. He who wants to create an eternal fullness will also create eternal emptiness. You cannot undertake one without the other. And this is probably one of the most beautiful stopping points of this video, because this brings us back to what God even is. And God is ineffable. We can understand him. I don't even say him. That's a mistake. We can understand God through many things, through universal love, through the harmony of all existence. We can understand God as what makes things meaningful, but God is even beyond that, because God contains the meaning and the meaninglessness. God contains the universal love and the fragmented love and the hate that results as a result of fragmented love. God contains everything. God is Ein Sof. God is the emptiness that is the fullness. He who wants to create an eternal fullness will also create eternal emptiness, Carl Jung says. This is the Ein Sof. This is the emptiness of God. This is that which is beyond Keter, which Pluto ushers in Keter. Pluto ushers in Keter, which is potential, which has potential to be potential. It's inert potential, potential that is not emotion, and it brings it out of absolute nothingness, the absence of potential. So this is essentially what's happening, is we're moving in and out of the seasons. We lust for the 10,000 things, and then we seek to return back to the emptiness. We seek to return back to the one, and then to the emptiness, so we can rest. And this whole thing that we call life is that evolutionary process, moving in and out of emptiness, moving in and out of the seasons, moving in and out of duality, moving in and out of the Ein Sof. Well, I think that's all I have to say in this video. This has been the purpose of hell. Hell is there to engrave the image of Pluto, let's say the scorpion, upon your soul, so that demons can no longer have any level of possession over you, but you still have the same level of connection to demons, but it's only experienced externally now, and you have the opportunity to work alchemically with them, which is what Pluto is all about. Hades, Pluto, hell. Thanks for joining me.